The Cougars head east for a huge non-conference showdown against East Carolina. Your home for the best coverage of Cougar football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hans Olsen, Scott Gerard, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Cougar Preview Show today. Remember, U Preview Show tomorrow, and then Friday, it's a Football Friday as we get you ready for all the games coming up on Saturday. BYU making their first road trip of the year, and it's a long one, all the way to East Carolina to take on the Pirates. Stephen Igoe, kind enough to join us, covers ECU on Hoist the Colors. Stephen, how you doing, man?
Hey, Stephen.
I'm doing good, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on, and certainly I think a lot of Pirate fans are looking forward to this one, obviously getting a Big 12 opponent at home. So it should be a fun one Saturday night.
Well, you guys took Coastal Carolina behind the woodshed there in Coastal Carolina and creating turnovers right and left. Is this kind of the MO of this defense, try to find a way to create as many turnovers as possible?
Yeah, it's definitely always been since Blake Harrell has gotten to ECU, which was in 2020 as defensive coordinator at the time. And, you know, he's always had a multiple blitz-heavy defense. I would say it's definitely evolved over the years to be a little less blitz-happy, but I remember when he first got here, it was almost like a 50% blitz rate. Now it's dropped quite a bit over them, but they still will have games where they bring the house more times than they don't, and it just kind of depends on the opponent, what each game kind of presents from a different offensive point of view. But definitely they pride themselves on creating turnovers. It feels like, if you go back, and I don't know the exact statistic off the top of my head, but it certainly feels like more times than not they're creating at least 1-2 turnovers a game, because they kind of pride themselves on what they call havoc plays, and just whether it's TFLs, getting in the backfield, creating turnovers. They kind of have a unique defense where they'll shift just before the snap. In some cases, they'll angle their defensive line to try to get leverage on certain types of blocks, and they bring pressure from just about everywhere. So there's a lot of moving parts, but he's been in place now, and obviously new defensive coordinator Josh Aldridge has carried over a lot of that, but they feel pretty good about their defense being able to create some issues for opposing offenses.
How is the general health of this team right now, and what is the status of Xavier McCulver?
So I would say the health overall is, it's in a decent place. McIver he was their starting D tackle to begin the year. He injured his meniscus in the opener versus NC State. I would not expect him back for this weekend. I think they're targeting conference play, most likely after the bye week following the Army game, just from what I've heard. But overall, 3 games in, I would expect most teams you lose a few players at this point. They haven't really lost anybody super significant. One of their more significant injuries was in the preseason. They lost a defensive back by the name of Demarius Hines, who they expected to play a role this year, either at nickel or safety. He's missing the entire season, so that makes him, may not have started, but certainly was a guy they were counting on for special teams and defense. And then one of their backup running backs, DeJuan Lacey, he actually is, 4th or 5th on the depth chart, but looked really good. Actually got hurt late in the Coastal Carolina game, just kind of a freak play, got hit directly on the knee on a run. So I would not expect him to see him this week and maybe the rest of the season based off what I'm hearing. But as far as like super significant injuries to key guys, they have not really lost anybody long-term to this point.
So I was talking to some coaches very familiar with the game plan on this one, and they said it didn't take long to run film before Hauser really popped and showed what he can do. What's it been like to see him and what he's brought to the table?
Yeah, look, when he first committed from Michigan State last offseason, I expected him to be the guy, and was honestly shocked. They ended up going with Jake Garcia, former Miami player, obviously spent time in Missouri. Now he's at Michigan as a backup. I always thought Hauser, watching practice last preseason, was the better operator of the offense. He just was not as flashy. He didn't have, the rocket arm that Garcia had, but just seemed like much more calm, cool, collected. And ever since he's gotten the job midway through last year, he has brought that to the table. He is a guy that his teammates respect. He's really grown as a leader vocally. And the thing about Hauser is he doesn't have like the most impressive tools in the world. Like he's not going to throw the ball, 100 miles an hour or anything like that. But he puts good touch on the ball. He knows how to throw a catchable ball. And obviously, as a quarterback, that sounds kind of simple. But like really, if he needs to rifle one into a tight window, he can do it. If he needs to throw a swing pass with the right amount of touch, he can do that. And the biggest thing that he did the second half of last year that we haven't really seen early this year is he hit the deep ball. He's actually really good on the deep ball, graded out exceptionally well per Pro Football Focus, hitting some big plays downfield. And for whatever reason, they've been a tick off on the deep ball early this season. But the area he's improved is the intermediate to short game. So if he can hit some big plays, kind of as the next few weeks come, in addition to the dink and dunk plays, and I think this offense could really start hitting on all cylinders because that's really when it's at its best.
I know Scotty kind of opened up with some thoughts on the defense and forcing and causing fumbles and turnovers. I want to get a little bit deeper with you on this. I call the color for these BYU games, so I'll be out there and excited to meet you. But I was watching some film on this Coastal Carolina game, and I was just telling Scotty, it's like East Carolina forced a fumble, Coastal would recover it, then they would force a fumble, they would recover it, and it felt like they had Coastal Carolina fumbling the ball everywhere. And if it wasn't fumbling, defenders stepping in front of passes and pass rushes that Josiah Robinson is full of pressure. Just talk about what you saw against Coastal Carolina. Where were all of these turnovers coming from? Is this Coastal Carolina not being good, or is that just what East Carolina can do?
I really think it's a combination. I'll be honest, Coastal I don't think is as good as they normally are. I do think, they've got a first-year coordinator. They're trying to run like some type of air raid system, and I think, they've had quarterback issues. So I certainly think that plays a role. But like I also think, the way they went out and played versus NC State and at times, really kind of held their own against an NC State offense that has since, I think they ranked top 10 nationally in rushing yards. Well, ECU held them to, I think, 105 yards, 3.2 yards per carry. Their running back, Hollywood Smothers, is the real deal. And so looking back at that game and you kind of couple that with what they've done in the 2 weeks since against what you could call maybe a little bit inferior competition, I think plays a role. But I'm encouraged. Talking with Josh Aldridge, the defensive coordinator in the preseason, he was like, I know we have questions, but he's like, the one thing I do know we can do is we can line up and we can win in pass rushing situations. So they feel good about their edge guys. They feel good. They've got a good amount of length at linebacker. They've got some speed at nickel, which they'll bring on blitzes as well. So they feel good about their ability to create pressure. Now, I think we all know BYU probably will have the best offensive line, if not the best, at least one of the best that ECU will face all season. So I'll be curious to see, do they try and line up and do they try to bring the house after Bachmeier? Did they just rush forward and play more coverage? I think, do they mix it up? I think that's kind of an interesting chess match, assuming they can actually stop the run and put BYU into passing situations. But I think they feel good about their pass rushers. They feel solid about their coverage. The opponent definitely played a role. But also when this defense is at its best, it's when they get you behind the chains by stopping the run, then they can do a whole lot on the back end to confuse the opposing offense.
What's the vibe in the community, not just about this game, but the potential of what this season could be like for East Carolina?
I tell you what, it's kind of done a complete 180 from midway through last year when Mike Houston, who a lot of people around here really respect and like, he just, for whatever reason, it just didn't work here in the end. He had some bright spots, including, the 2022 win at BYU, which was a big win for East Carolina at the time. And that was in the stretch of, they beat Memphis, UCF, and BYU back-to-back and had a shot to beat Cincinnati on the road, compete for a conference title. But it was almost like after they lost that Cincinnati game, things kind of got away the rest of that season. They got away the following season, and then to start last season, it was ugly. He got fired mid-season. Blake Harrell gets promoted. Not really a lot was expected out of him, but he has just done a great job of getting the players and fan base to buy in. He's now, I think, 7-2 as head coach since taking over, and he's got them playing a free and easy house money style. Kind of fits with his defensive play calling mentality. They go for it a lot on fourth down. They'll fake punts. They'll do some different stuff on special teams. So the vibes are good. It's still not all the way back to, what I remember, growing up here in Greenville, like, peak ECU football, but they're expecting a big crowd. I think the AD put out today, they're looking at somewhere in the mid-40s with hopes of it getting to, close to 50,000, which would be a sellout. I'm sure a lot of BYU fans will travel as well. But, night game, national opponent, primetime spot. I would be very surprised if it's not a pretty rocking atmosphere on Saturday inside Dowdy Ficklen.
So, Stephen, give me some of your initial impressions on BYU.
I mean, I just think the most impressive thing, obviously, you got to start with the defense. Just watching some tape, I went back and watched some games last year, when they faced similar offenses to what ECU runs. Like I watched some of the Baylor games, some of their other Big 12 games. And, I mean, just their ability defensively to control the line of scrimmage. And then I watched, obviously, the Stanford game, and there was just not much room to maneuver there. And then offensively, it's, I know obviously they're not doing a whole lot right now with Bachmeier. Part of that is they haven't needed to. And the other part of it is they're just that good up front. They can run the football. They impose their will on opposing defenses. And I think that's my biggest question is, like, ECU historically under this regime has done a good job of stopping the run against Power 4 opponents. But I do think BYU with its physicality is a little bit of a different animal. ECU's got good size in the trenches, but I wonder just how that matchup's going to go. But I am curious, and also the X's and O's battle on defense with Blake Harrell and Josh Aldridge. Obviously, if you do get Bachmeier in a passing situation, do you blitz? Do you play coverage? How do you handle that? And then I'm sure BYU fans want to see how he handles that situation too. So it should be a really fascinating, chess match on Saturday.
So I know that we try to get opinions from all over the country at different levels, and ECU at the G4 level, but that's a populous part. But you are competing against other corporate opportunities with those universities in the Triangle. So what are the NIL? What's the NIL perspective look like out there, and how well has ECU done to compete in that square?
That's a good question. I feel like they've done a solid job. Greenville, North Carolina, obviously is not a big market in terms of just, think of big cities, big money, that sort of stuff. I mean, it is a big school. ECU has always had a large enrollment, upper 20,000s. It's a public state institution. They put a ton of, people into the workforce, a lot in the medical field especially. Also, a lot of teachers. So it's one of those things where it's like in some ways, it's like a hard-working blue-collar community. There are some significant donors here, especially, if you look around the state of North Carolina. A lot of the alumni base does, let's say they go to East Carolina, then they'll go to Raleigh, or they'll go to Charlotte, or they'll go to somewhere in Virginia. So you kind of have a good East Carolina presence up and down the East Coast, I would say, and definitely – the southeast part of the United States. And, NIL-wise, they're in a solid perspective for a group of 5 schools, certainly towards the top third, I would say. And that is, probably sits the same in the American, too. Like, I don't know the official terms, but I would put them probably below, like a USF and Memphis, which has FedEx money. Memphis does. Also, some of the, schools like Tulane, which is a private institution, they have heavy NIL backing. But outside of those 3 schools, I think ECU is right there, and they feel like they're in that upper tier of the American where they can compete for a championship, when all the stars kind of align on any given year.
All right, Stephen, so I put together my keys to the game for the opening broadcast of these games as we get started on a Saturday. And there's one group in particular that I'm really looking at just in the on-the-field battle. And I look at your receivers like Anthony Smith, Yannick Smith, Brock Spalding, Peyton Mangrum stood out to me. Desario Riles, the tight end. The other tight end, Javante Connor. These are the guys. Like, I'm looking at these targets. I'm like, man, these are all really good targets. And then I look at BYU's defensive backfield with Evan Johnson and Maury Bamba and Tommy Parasis. And I say, okay, who's going to win here? Because I actually think ECU's got good protection. I think BYU's going to probably roll a ton of blitz and try to confuse them, but I think you've got a quarterback that gets rid of it quick. So I think that one of the biggest, most critical battles is going to be those wide receivers for ECU I just mentioned versus these corners and DBs for BYU that I mentioned. How good do you believe your wide receivers are at man-on-man coverage and getting open?
That's a great point and great question. I kind of thought the same, like watching that Baylor tape last year. I noticed when the game was on the line, BYU went man coverage, and it was almost like, all right, who's going to win?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I feel pretty good about ECU's receivers. I think, and I know BYU loves its linebackers. So, like, I really think ECU's tight ends, Riles and Connor, are two of the most talented tight ends that ECU's had. I mean, they're big, physical. They can run. Riles is one of the faster guys on the team at 6'4", 240. Does ECU try to isolate those matchups? Does BYU believe their linebackers can cover? That's a matchup I'm looking forward to seeing. And then, Anthony Smith, in the past, he is a 4-4, probably a 4-3 guy, honestly. He can fly. Yannick Smith is more of your physical, not real fast, but he's going to use his body to box guys out. He was a basketball standout in high school, got really strong hands. And then Brock is kind of your typical slot receiver, shifty, catches everything thrown to him. So they really have different types of weapons. I would say Yannick is a guy who you're probably not going to get a bunch of separation from, but he's going to make contested catches. Anthony Smith can run away from guys. Does BYU try to take away the top from him? Do they make him prove he can beat them underneath? That's one of those things he's gotten a lot better at year over year, and it's kind of turned into instead of a big play guy, a guy who can do it all. But I think ECU is going to believe in their guys, and I think BYU is probably going to believe in their guys, and it may just turn into, may the best man win come Saturday.
Should be a fun one. We appreciate your time. Enjoy this one. And by the way, my guy here is always looking for a restaurant recommendation. What are you thinking out there?
Man, there's a lot. Sub Dogs is the Barstool best bar multiple time winner. So if you want to get the true college scene, you can go there. If you want some Italian food, you've got Nino's, you got Native Fine Downer, Ford and Shep. Anywhere downtown, there's a bunch of good spots. So feel free to hit me up. I can give you the full scouting report as well, all fair.
Nice. All right, there he is. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the game coming up on Saturday.
All right, appreciate you guys.
Hans and Scotty. Stephen Igoe, excuse me. Covers ECU. Does a tremendous job, and good conversation on what he thinks East Carolina can do up against BYU. And I think he echoes a lot of the comments of his coach that there's a high level of confidence there.
This is going to be a wide receiver versus DB battle.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be ECU's wide receivers versus BYU's DBs. Because this is my top end projection. BYU at 28 points. That's top end projection. That means ECU is going to have to beat 28. They're going to have to beat them through the passing game. BYU will shut down the ECU run game. I don't care how good ECU thinks they might be in the run game, which they aren't. They haven't tried.
Yeah.
They don't need it because they got a pass game that's very unique. They only average 135 rushing yards a game. So I'm not concerned about it. Now, they might try to trick you and come out with something unique, but they're not that dumb because they've seen that BYU's rushing defense is holding teams to 7 yards per game. 7 yards.
You know what? We're going to make that 14. We're going to double it this game.
We're going to hurt them we're going to hit them where it hurts. That's not going to happen. So, Scotty, can ECU score 30 points between their quarterbacks and receivers? And the more I ask myself the question, the more I think no.
I agree with you on that, but I'll disagree with you on the number on 28. I think the number is probably somewhere 23 or 24 that BYU's offense is capable in this game. If BYU scores 28 points in this game, bam, that's a massive success. I don't know if I trust that offense to get 28 on the road, their first road game of the year with a freshman quarterback.
That's right.
And again, I hope I'm wrong. And you said high end. And I think that's right. That's probably the high end. I think realistically, 21 to 24. But I also think BYU's defense could hold East Carolina to 10 or 14.
So realistically, so right now, they're number 11 in the country in defensive scoring. They only allow 9 points.
Yeah.
They have only allowed an average of 9 points. They allowed So 24 against North Carolina
24.
State?
They have not allowed a touchdown since week 1.
So they've only allowed 24 against North Carolina State. So you're right. I mean, just going off previous opponents and numbers. Okay, let's just say BYU matches North Carolina State. It's 24.
They win.
I'm not positive that BYU can match North Carolina State at East Carolina. I'm not positive about that. With a true freshman and, maybe some of the true freshman limitations. Okay, so let's be realistic and let's just set the number and say it's 22 points. All right, well, can ECU's wide receiver and passing game, can they hold Jay Hill's unpredictable blitzing, unpredictable stunting, unpredictable coverages? Can they manage that to 22 points? The way you can't, the way you don't, is if they throw some picks. I think BYU comes out of this game. If you gave me an over-under of 1.5, I take the over. I think BYU is going to grab themselves a couple of picks. They got back on the pick train last week with 2 interceptions against, or two weeks ago, with 2 interceptions against Stanford. So they're back on that train. I think that they come out of this East Carolina game with at least 2 interceptions. Now, are those pick sixes? Are those picks in the red zone that set up a nice, easy BYU scoring opportunity? It's going to have to be. Like that, your special teams and your defense plays a big part in this. But, if you forced me off the table and you said, can BYU's corners handle these ECU receivers? I think they contain them just enough. They'll get their wins.
Yeah.
But I think BYU's defensive backfield is going to get just that many more wins.
And conversely on that, what's the one thing you can do to really hurt your defense is turn the ball over.
That's right.
And we saw that last year with the University of Utah. Great defense, but an offense who let him down.
That's right.
So I'm telling Bear Bachmeier. Well, I don't know if I'll tell Bear Bachmeier this, but if I'm definitely telling, if I'm Kalani, I'm telling Aaron Roderick, saying, hey, guess what? Punts aren't necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
Just don't make it a short field for him. And, we might see a conservative game plan like we did the first couple of games of the year. All right, 2:36, Hans and Scotty. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Nobody gets you ready for Utah football more than the KSL Sports Zone.
Ready?
Kyle Whittingham and the Utes open up Big 12 play with a huge game against Texas Tech. Catch a special Ute edition of College Football Saturday starting at 8 a.m. Your home for the best coverage of Utah football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hans and Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hey, I don't know if they can cater your broadcast booth at East Carolina, but it would be nice if Kenny J's could make it to East Carolina.
Yeah.
Is it Greenville? I think that's where you're
It is
flying
Greenville.
Yeah.
That is correct.
It'd be nice because apparently that's about the best barbecue you're going to get in East Carolina. Kenny J Barbecue, go to KennyJBBQ.com. That's KennyJBBQ.com. At least have some pride in your look. I'm not a big Carolina barbecue fan. I'm not a big fan of the vinegar sauce, but at least take some pride in it. Don't be sending our guy to an Italian place. Like, look, we all like the OG, but I don't want to go to East Carolina to have fettuccine Alfredo.
Well, it'd be like him calling us and being like, so I'm coming into Salt Lake. Where should I go? Well, we have a sushi joint it's really good sushi.
Hit the OG. You ever heard of it?
Yeah.
It's delicious sushi.
Okay. And
Sushi. Oh, so you're landlocked? But we pull it right with brine shrimp right out of the Great Salt Lake.
And I'm going to head this off on the pass. I didn't want to have teppanyaki in Albuquerque. It was just convenient to have teppanyaki in Albuquerque.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I knew where you were going.
I wasn't.
Because you're like,
I wouldn't do that.
You're being a hypocrite. I'm like, okay, maybe a little bit, but it was out of convenience. It's not like I went out of my way to look for teppanyaki.
I won't drag you for that.
But you made a dramatic misstep with that, though. Like it was.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, the green chilies.
The culinary. I mean, it's unbelievable there.
What's sad, you guys? Like I keep on P days now, you get to talk to your missionary.
Yes.
So I keep asking Rock, like, so son, do those fresh sopapillas and, the fresh pressed tortillas and the amazing, delicious baked and grilled chilies and the green chilies. He ain't getting none of that. He hasn't had any of that. Not one.
Doesn't make it into the reservation.
No, doesn't get out there.
Not even a little bit. There has to be something there.
Nope.
No. Hey, have you seen the pictures Hans
Yeah,
sends us?
I get it. It's the middle of nowhere, but there's got to be something. Well, like I said, hit up the get the green chili.
I don't
burger.
even
Can
think-
you not get the green chili burger from Blake's Lotto Burger?
He probably can't even find a McDonald's out there.
No.
That's why I said
no.
Blake's Lotto Burger.
No, there's a single gas station that's within 4 miles of this area in northern Arizona. It's just a corner of northern Arizona, Kaibato, Arizona. I don't even know if it's a city. And he's like, yeah, we go to the gas station. I get a soda.
You need to be sending him like Snickers bars.
And I'm like, holy crap.
He's going to
man.
come home 250.
The New Mexico food is such an underrated gem. It
But
really
apparently
is.
not in that area. Well, go tell him to get a Blake's Lotto Burger, green chili burger, just so we can get some green chili.
Where is there?
There has to be one there.
In Cobbito?
You do.
On the
Hey,
Blue Salt Reservation?
Call your relatives.
I don't have any in that area, I don't think.
Well,
I don't think there's any in that area.
I mean, here's the thing. It'll probably say, hey, take a $200
You shut your mouth because I know right where you're
Uber
going.
ride and go find him some
Because that's
green
what it
chilies.
was going to take. That's why you went to the
It was going to
teppanyaki.
be about $100 round trip.
Stop.
Okay.
It was not.
It was $80 round trip. It was $40 one way. All right. We'll wrap this thing up. Final thoughts on East Carolina and BYU next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Huge non-conference showdown against East Carolina. Your home for the best coverage of Cougar football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hans and Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. All right. By the way, Kenny J Barbecue. Get there now. Kenny J Barbecue. They will cater. You can go to their restaurant in the district in South Jordan. They're good people. They'll take care of you. Kenny J Barbecue. Check out their catering menu online at kennyjbbq.com.
So delicious. Great barbecue right here in our state. Close to you. Get in there and see why we love the Kenny J's experience. It's a Texas flair. From the interior design to the way they smoke that amazing meat, it's just kind of a delicious Texas flair. And plus, we love the Kenny J family.
Yeah, we do. We do. All right, BYU East Carolina. I'm going to go, and I don't want to put you in a bad spot because I know you're calling the game. I'm going to go BYU 21, East Carolina 13.
Low scoring.
Low scoring. I don't know what the over-under is, but I would lean under on that one, whatever that number may be. But
it's so hard to score on Jay Hill's defense, man. So you want to know what buoys me up in this game? It's the Colorado defensive game plan that they went into the Alamo Bowl with.
And they got four sacks in that game, too.
4 sacks. They had the bye week, Lloyd. Thank you. Yes. You see, he's got the home game, and they got they got a couple of areas that are okay. Bye week, Jay Hill's D, unpredictable. And I talked about BYU does not have an edge player with a sack.
Yeah.
But BYU's got 2 D tackles with sacks.
Mm-hmm. And they got linebackers that can
They
get there.
got linebackers with sacks. So I feel it's going to be such a good game.
It'll be a great game.
But I feel positive that BYU can get what they need to get out of this game.
All right, JJ and Alex coming up next. It was media day for the Utah Mammoth earlier this morning, and they'll have some more conversations with Utah Mammoth players coming up next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.